We're like sure like so I'll be like Commissioner Martin. You're like a chirp like birds for roll call.
Please, God, no.
Thank you for making me a name tag, Mr. Casey Staff.
For our vigorous debates. Well, I'm out just for the rest of the semester.
This is not going to work well. They're huge. Who made these so large?
I saw yours, Eleanor.
It's probably
Eleanor, I'm right here.
Yeah, did you make these so large? Why'd you make them? Well, they kind of need to be large, otherwise you
That
can't
way
read
people
out.
can read your names.
Here's mine.
How you doing, John?
Doing I just want a new clicker. This one doesn't work. I don't know what other class.
I think it's the batteries, to be honest.
Well, someone has to run stack anyway.
It's gonna pull an iron because the vice president.
That's not it. That won't. Oh, batteries.
Okay, if voting senators could sit on the sides, and if anyone from the public or media sit off over here, staff and interns are over here, commissioners in the front row, and the vice commissioners too.
Let's see if this works. A little more powerful. Good luck.
You do have some underground.
You need some Altoids?
I got it. I have something like this. I got options. How's your family?
Have respect.
So the treasurer name was on this.
Did you make LaRon a name tag?
Yes, I did.
Okay. No, that's not me.
Is there any rhyme or reason?
This is you, Sam. Oh,
Yeah.
Always just
Hello, family.
follow your hopes and dreams. Oh wait, no, that's ours. Someone take yours? I think you just pick the one you want to be.
Hey.
That's how it goes. That should be how it goes. John, it's not here.
Huh?
The name tag's not here.
I literally made it. It might be in a stack of multiple because somebody there it is. No problem. Ready to do it.
No, you went to the
No, we never got anything to put the numbers up. Well, here. I'm sorry. I just did that. No, I'm sorry. You don't know your numbers. Yeah, the freezer. The freezer. Okay. Yeah, that's right. My one job? Nope, it's my only job. I get paid half tuition to only do one thing, and that's write out a piece of paper and hand it to you. No, it's the same as last time. Well, stock is the same, so that's okay.
Vice President and I were.
What?
Nicole and I were.
Okay.
Yeah, wait a minute. I'll bring it later. Yes.
Drowning? How do you know you're alive?
Actually, I don't think so. I might be a little off, but we'll fix it next week. JK, they're true and accurate. I know that for a fact.
I was about to say, yeah. Calling the meeting to order. We might have some glitching. There we go. So before we go into student speak out, I'm going to lay out the structure of tonight's meeting because I feel that there will be significant feedback from you all about the policy. The executives, we have decided on the structure for tonight and how much time has been appropriated to each section on the agenda. And this is found in the rules and procedures. That's why we can do that if anyone has questions about that. Student speak out will be, if there's anyone here to speak out, that will be for 10 minutes this evening, a minute and a half per person. Basically, next week is our heavy emphasis on constituents to come to Senate to speak about the policy. That's what our structure is going to be regarding the policies. Announcements should be kept to about 5 minutes. Our presenter, Faculty Senate Chair Joe McLaughlin, is here. That should be about half an hour. Him and I have already talked. That he says it will take probably about 10 minutes-ish of a presentation, and the rest of the time is open for questions. So I don't want to go past half an hour for that. For resolutions tonight, we have 2 items on the consent agenda. Like I said, any member may remove that from the unanimous consent agenda if they think that it needs to be debated further. And then each of the rule changes, we have 3 of those tonight. The debate time on that will be 5 minutes. As for our item for discussion, it will be half an hour. Each senator will be given a minute and a half, and will be warned by the Chief Justice when you have, 30 seconds left on the clock. We will be running a stack for that tonight. So Vice President Schneider and Chief of Staff Schlosser will be up at the computer running what we call a stack that gives everyone an equal time to speak about the matter. What you will do is you'll simply raise your name tag, wait till your name is put on the board. Then if you want to speak again, you'll then go into another column because the precedence is given to the people who have not spoken at all. and that's how we will do the stack. Then we will go into executive session for approximately 20 minutes this evening. And you can see from the listed agenda why we're going into executive session. And I will explain more once we get to that further down in the agenda. So moving on to student speak out. If there are any students here to speak out this evening, please say your name, where you live, on campus, off campus, your major, and your year. Are there any students here to speak out this evening? Okay. Seeing none, hopefully a lot next week. Talk to your constituents. Are there any announcements for this evening? Yes, historian.
So I'm just going to read off an email, just action items. Just as a quick update, Nick Felt, Nicole, and I are working with the Student Latin Union to start a continuous disaster relief effort. Whereas when people think of natural disasters, they think, oh, once the storm has passed, it's over. But unfortunately, there have been a lot more hurricanes that are reaching higher categories. And right now, Category 5 Maria is going to hit Puerto Rico again. So that's what this campaign that the three of us are working with the LSU and hopefully more student organizations as the year goes on. So our current action items are developing the campaign with Sarah Defabaugh and event planners and just our PR team. Trying to get as many people to staff the tables this Thursday. If I'm not mistaken, we still have a table, Nick?
Yeah, we're gonna have a table tomorrow from 12 to 5. So if you guys got a half hour or anything to stop on by, any help is more than appreciated.
Yeah, so like Nick said, please, even 10 minutes, 30 minutes. I'll give out contact information if you want to help out, and then you can just reach us there. Other than that, we're just probably going to meet this week and discuss future plans for Tuesday. So just be on the lookout. Please try to get involved. Even if you pass on the word, we'll try to get organizations involved. That's it.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Environmental Affairs Commissioner Romero.
I'm speaking on behalf of Mr. Wilson. We still need more members for the Special Committee for Sustainable Living. And so we need one member from off campus, one member from University Life, one member from Minority Affairs, 2 members from Environmental, and 2 members from Resident Life. So please talk to me or reach out to Mr. Wilson if you are interested in taking a part of this committee. It's going to be awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other announcements for this evening? Yes, Eleanor.
All together is next week. We all know I've been on this thing for 5 years now. Be there. You're not disappointing. It's on Tuesday, all day. Baker, just show up, hang out with us. And then Designated Space Tuesday night, movie on Wednesday, and on Friday is self-care workshop. Oh, and a Better Bystanders workshop on Thursday. Basically, get a calendar, go! Please. Thanks.
Are there any other announcements, Hannah? Women's Affairs Commission, you want to say?
No.
No? Okay.
I was going to say
Okay, that's fine. Any other announcements for this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to our presenter, Faculty Senate Chair, Dr. Joe McLaughlin.
Thanks, Landon. It's good to be back here. Those of you who were part of this group last year may recall I came in and did a presentation and question and answer around the issue of textbook affordability when the governor had made a proposal in the budget. For those of you who have not been I'm a faculty member in the Department of English. My specialty is Victorian Studies. I'm also the Director of Study for our HTC programs, which means that it's making Olivia very nervous to be in the room with me right now. She's waiting for me to sign off on her prospectus. So the quicker we get me out of here, the better it is for her. I'm also the chair of Faculty Senate. This is the second year of that I'm doing that. We do 1-year terms, but they are renewable. And several years ago, I had done a 3-year term as well. So I was invited to come here tonight and asked to talk about 3 issues very briefly. But one of them in particular, I'm not exactly sure what you want to hear about. So I'm really going to sort of open things up for questions. But the first thing I was asked to talk about are ways in which Faculty Senate and Student Senate can collaborate on things. I can tell you that last year, in response to some of the incidents that happened in the fall on the graffiti wall, the chairs of the 5 university senates, that's our Senate, this Senate, Graduate Student Senate, and then the classified and administrative employee senates, got together and decided that as senates we wanted to sort of push the university to put together a group to look at issues of diversity and inclusion. And in my 20 plus years at Ohio University, that was the first time the Senates had ever gotten together and asked the university to do something. So President McDavis was kind of flabbergasted by that and wrote back in about 10 minutes and said, sure. So we got that thing going last year, and this year we met again in the fall to try to continue that process forward. One of the things that you are no doubt aware of in the university over the past year and then continuing on to this year, we have been doing some major time and labor-intensive searches for university leadership. So last year there was a presidential search. This year we're going to be doing the provost search. One of the benefits of those kinds of activities when universities engage in them is that people who chair groups like this tend to get involved in the search process, be on search committees, and end up spending a lot of time together. So I was in lots and lots of meetings and events last year with Hannah, and this year as things are kicking off, I said to Landon coming in this evening, it's 7 o'clock and this is the first time I've seen you today. That's really weird. So I would say that right now, and I've been involved in Faculty Senate on and off, but mostly on for the last 17 years, I think the lines of communication right now between the leaders of the Senates are as strong and open as they have ever been. So for instance, the heads of the 5 Senates met with Dr. Nellis and Dr. Discutner last Friday morning to talk about how we're going to move forward in gathering feedback about these interim policies that have been on everyone's agenda for the last couple of weeks. These things are very good, and I think we're talking with each other and we're looking for ways that we can collaborate and support each other. The second item I was asked to talk about this evening, and this is the one that's a little fuzzy to me, but I was asked to talk about Faculty Senate and its relationship to the curriculum, or how curriculum gets made at the university. I can tell you a few general things. First of all, there is sort of an inherent principle in the university, and these things come up like when we get accredited, that the faculty own the curriculum. So faculty are responsible for initiating and approving curriculum in the university. Most of that work does not involve Faculty Senate. Most of that work happens in departments, it happens in colleges, and eventually it bubbles up to the University Curriculum Council, which is connected to Faculty Senate. Our Vice Chair, David Thomas, the Vice Chair of Faculty Senate, serves as the chair of the University Curriculum Council. But that is the group that ultimately approves all new courses or substantial revisions to existing courses, changes to program requirements, new programs, and is engaged in program review. There are some faculty senators who serve on the University Curriculum Council, but I would call it a kind of semi-autonomous relationship or a semi-autonomous body. About the only time Faculty Senate gets directly involved in curriculum would be if there were going to be substantial changes to the general education requirements. That would not be, should such and such a course count for this Tier 2 category. It would be more like, are we going to keep requiring Tier 3? Or do we think having a JCOMP requirement is a good idea? Those are the kinds of things that would sort of rise to the level of Faculty Senate. We are also involved in lots of educational policy. These are the kinds of things that I think show up in the catalog and would involve policies having to do with attendance, add drop, dates for withdrawal from courses, things of that nature. Okay. The third thing that I was asked to talk about this evening was to give you an update on a conversation that started last year, which would involve adding, potentially as a general education requirement, and this is why it came Faculty Senate's way, some kind of requirement Various terms are used for this. Sometimes these are talked about as a cultural competency requirement. Sometimes it's a cultural sensitivity requirement. At some universities, this is a term that I like better and most faculty like better. They actually have a kind of diversity requirement as a sort of general education requirement. And we're looking at those kinds of models right now. One thing you should know is that in my experience, it is very, very hard to add requirements to a general education curriculum. There are many programs in the university. I'll pick on a couple. Lots of the engineering programs, our music education programs that are really packed with requirements. And students have very little flexibility within their 120 credits. And faculty in those areas get very nervous when you talk about adding new requirements on top of a set of requirements that is already very rich. So right now, the conversation that started last year is going to pick up some steam this year in Faculty Senate is not, I think, moving in the direction of adding new requirements, but thinking about whether or not we can bolster or repurpose a requirement that we already have. And what we're looking at is the Tier 2 requirement in cross-cultural perspectives. I have asked the University Curriculum Council, which has a general education subcommittee this year, to look very closely at that requirement, take a look at what the learning objectives are under that requirement, think about whether or not they are doing what we want them to do, not just now, but maybe looking forward a little bit. Think about whether or not we might need to add new learning objectives to that requirement, and just think about how that's working. So in some sense, that's going to involve a kind of active assessment in terms of what's happening, what's supposed to be happening in those classes. I don't know if it's going to quite get as far as what, from a faculty perspective, would be a really draconian thing, because we don't usually do things like this, but actually go and look at courses that currently fulfill the requirement and think about whether or not we want to allow them to continue. We're very good about adding things, allowing things to happen. We're not very good about stepping in and saying this isn't doing the job. Although it may be that in that area, if we do end up adding some learning objectives to that requirement, it may be that certain courses that have counted in that area may no longer count in that area before. So right now, that's kind of the way that conversation is going, but it's not just about looking internally. We are looking at a couple of models from other universities. The University of Maryland and UCLA have both added diversity requirements in the last 5 years or so. There were battles on those campuses, I have to tell you that. But we're trying to see what happens in other places and what makes sense for us. So that is the status of that conversation right now. I think those are the three things I was asked to talk about, and I'm happy to answer questions for you about any of those things or anything else you want to ask the Chair of Faculty Senate.
Okay.
Yes.
What are the standards or objectives for that required tier right now, or do they change per college?
No, they don't change for college, and I don't have the answer for that, and I can try and get that and send it to Landon. But the whole point of general education is that the general education requirements are requirements that every student in the university has to take regardless of their college. So they don't shift by college. What can get a little, and this is a problem in the system too. In my college, the College of Arts and Sciences, students typically fulfill most of their Tier 2 requirements through doing their Arts and Sciences distribution requirements. So they might take a, women's gender and sexuality studies course that is fulfilling a social science requirement for arts and sciences, and not even know that by doing that they're also fulfilling their Tier 2 requirements in cross-cultural perspectives. So it doesn't change by college, but I think in many of the colleges, people don't have a strong awareness of what those courses are. And certainly a lot of those courses, and this is something else I think that the University Curriculum Council wants to work on, is going back to faculty and having them do things on their syllabus where they say, hey, this is a course in X, but it also fulfills this Tier 2 requirement, and this is what this Tier 2 requirement is all about. I can also say that our Tier 2 requirements, like most of our general education program, was built in the late 1970s and hasn't had a lot of scrutiny since then. I know there was a group probably about 8 or 9 years ago that went back, especially with some of those Tier 2 things, and tried to look at what some of the learning objectives were. And they were actually going back to documents from the 1970s to look at what people thought they were doing and decide this was going to be important. But I can get the answer to your leadership about what those are right now.
Commissioner Romo?
I have a question. As a fellow HEC student,
Yeah.
would this also be part for HEC students? Because
No, it's not, and that's another thing. HTC students do not have university requirements. HTC requirements are all unique to their respective programs.
Right.
So
would this be required for HEC students?
if it's just a matter of working with the Tier 2 requirements that we have on the books, it would not be. But now you're entering into a conversation where we're talking about should anything be required of HTC students, and part, I think, of the kind of foundational documents and curriculum that was put together around that program was that students in that program would not be subject to university requirements. So, that would open up that whole other kind of philosophical can of worms. Is HTC suddenly willing to sort of give up on its unique status to let program requirements be determined by the program? So that doesn't mean, I don't know which program you're in?
Environmental studies.
In environmental studies. That doesn't mean that Dr. Buckley and Dr. DeBelco couldn't put together a proposal and say, we want this to be part of our curriculum because we think this is important. But that goes back to what I was saying in the second part of my presentation. That's the place where certain kinds of requirements are really driven at the program level and the department level. So,
Nick?
Since this policy that you're discussing is in regards to what happened with the graffiti wall and just
In
diversity
part.
and inclusion in general for
Yeah.
the university, would it necessarily be considered academic if not a social requirement? Since the HTC is an institution that I'm also a part of the HTC.
yeah.
So wouldn't it technically be different from an academic requirement and more so a social standing requirement? And if the HTC is an institution of a high university, and a high university is for diversity and inclusion, it would be beneficial, in my opinion.
Now you're talking about another thing though, because what we're dealing with in the University Curriculum Council are academic requirements that are necessary for students to fulfill in order to graduate. I'm not exactly sure the kind of social standing. I mean, the thing that when I heard you talking comes to mind is something like alcohol EDU, where people would decide that all students needed to do this, but that would be sort of run through student affairs. I don't know. I'm probably going to get myself in trouble and tell you something wrong, but as far as the faculty at UCC are concerned, they're not going to stop you from graduating if you never do alcohol EDU.
And the answer along with what Nick said, we had a good conversation at our working meeting on Monday, and I'll give an update about that in my report because things like that did come up about social requirement. But like Joe said, it's not necessarily something faculty.
Yeah, that's not our terrain.
That's
One of our 4 standing committees is called the Educational Policy and Student Affairs Committee. 90% of what it's done historically has been educational policy, but that's the kind of thing that I could see coming to that committee for feedback, or possibly if some faculty got worked up about this, they could put forward a recommendation that said, the university should provide a certain kind of training or a certain kind of required experience. But that doesn't seem like the kind of thing that's going to get involved in the curriculum, which, maybe another kind of way to think about the curriculum is that's the stuff that the registrar tracks that ends up going into your transcript and credentials you. So that would be a different kind of route to go, although I don't think this is an either or sort of conversation. If we need to do something in the curriculum to sort of strengthen students' education in that particular area, that's certainly one thing. But if there were other kinds of efforts within the university, I think that's something Faculty Senate would be supporting.
Thank you. Sure. Yeah, Vice President Schneider.
Thank you. Okay. I know Landon was going to talk about this later in his report, but just since you were talking about it, could kind of the both of you explain to everyone what the next step in the process is going to be for the joint group on diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, I mean, in a very specific way, that group worked last year and decided that one of the things it wanted to put a lot of its effort into was administering a survey to gather data for the campus. When we had our initial meeting this year, we actually met with Dr. Pina in his new role as the interim chief diversity officer for the university, because we wanted him to know this was going on, and we also wanted to make sure that people weren't duplicating effort. One group doing this and the group that we put together doing this as well. And in his role, he's in a position to know about different efforts and to make sure that kind of thing isn't happening. So my understanding is because that group included representatives from all 5 of the senates, some of the people on that group, some of the faculty representatives are eager to continue in the work. In some cases, some new students have needed to be appointed. Some of the staff people have decided they didn't want to be involved any longer. Some new people are coming on. And we talked about this idea because this is kind of where they had gotten by the end of the year to sort of administer a survey, potentially do some focus groups. And we thought in this period this year, while the university is going to be doing a search and trying to recruit a new chief diversity officer, that this would be a good thing for us to do this year because it would create some kind of data for that new person to work with. Although I believe that group is also going to be talking about all kinds of things and making recommendations. So the kind of suggestion that was over here, that would be the kind of thing that group might think about there. Jason, did you want to?
Yeah, I just would add that in terms of logistics, all the Senate's chairs and presidents or presidents are forwarding their nominees to me, and then the president will formally invite them to be part of this group. And the 5 Senate leadership team has discussed how they're going to ensure that group coalesces together, works along that pathway moving forward. I've assigned someone from D&I that will staff that group to ensure notes, minutes are gathered that are put online and are helping to bring that group together from a scheduling standpoint. And I think I'm missing one other thing. But so I think we're right on the cusp of it being done. I'm actually only waiting for one Senate to give me the updates, and the president's already asked me for an update during my one-on-one with him, which is tomorrow. So unless I get an email tonight, we are 4/5 of the way for people, and the structure is in place, and we're ready to go. And I think 5 Senates have discussed a couple of their foci as they want to initiate this group this year. So we're in good shape for that.
And then an update from our end. So we have 4 representatives on the task force. Brianna is joining, Laron is joining, Rachel, and then Keaton Bonomo was on it last year and expressed a lot of interest in being on it. So, like Jason, Dr. Tina said, and like Joe said, we're moving forward.
And the 3 faculty members that I nominated, one is Julie White from Political Science, who was one of the co-chairs last year. Devika Chawla from Communication Studies, who was on the group last year. And this year, I've asked Ziad Abu Reach from history to join that group as well. So those are the faculty members. You know, one of the things I think that's a struggle for that group, and it was certainly a struggle for that group last year, Nicole, is that we had various things happen in our nation and on our campus around DACA, around the travel ban, and certainly the kinds of faculty and students who are going to be involved in a group like this are also going to be very involved in responses to sort of events like that. So I think a lot of us, and this is certainly the case for Faculty Senate, sort of got caught up in this almost kind of reactive mode last year, where every week or every couple weeks there was something that we had not anticipated that we really needed to put a lot of energy into. And that may be the kind of climate that we're existing in now. But the channel there, I think, for all of us, at whatever Senate we're in, is to find a way to also step back and deal with ongoing business that needs to keep happening and moving forward at the same time we're sort of expending our energy into sort of reacting things that we can't anticipate. And so for instance, while we have been working the last several weeks to get this group up and running, I don't think any of us were terribly prepared for the two new interim policies that were introduced and the kind of reaction that there's been there, and that's really important, and I'm not complaining about the work that we're doing on that at all, but it is a time suck, to say the least, and that, you know, it's very hard when you're in roles like I'm in and you guys are in to remind yourself once or twice a day, hey, there's this thing that we're supposed to be working on, and not just kind of reacting to the latest thing that came along.
Senator Randall?
Yes, hi, Bob Randall, very nice to meet you.
Yay.
Sorry, I apologize. My question has to do with diversity and inclusion training for faculty.
Yes.
Is there some sort of training for faculty in regards to diversity and inclusion?
I don't think so, and I may be forgetting something. In my experience as a faculty member, where we tend to have historically to get diversity and inclusion training has tended to be around faculty searches. So there have been moments while I've been here at the university, and certainly when I was department chair, when we are launching a search, there have been moments where the diversity and inclusion office or people in HR have come to departments and actually sat down and sort of stressed not just the importance, but the necessity of making sure that you have a diverse candidate pool and are trying really hard to get that. But
So there is, just to clarify, so there is no training for faculty in diversity and inclusion in regards to students. So whether that is
there's all kinds of informal stuff that goes on. I mean, people get involved in work groups and study groups. But I don't know. Jason, am I forgetting something?
I would personally not categorize this as training, but for new employees, every other week, Human Resources does new employee orientation for folks that come in, faculty, staff, whomever. And a representative from D&I goes to those meetings and passes out information, let them know what centers on campus, what they are, what they do, what they don't do, that they're a resource. So that's one. D&I also does a new career faculty of color program where they bring them together. It's actually in a few weeks, and try to select them with mentors so they have a connection on campus to go through that process. Women's Center also does one for women who are employees, both staff and faculty, and I think that's a year-long program. And when I have an opportunity to speak to new faculty, which is after they've already been hired, it's the orientation that happens a day or two before classes begin. I reinforce sort of our philosophy around diversity and inclusion, what our departments are and what they do, both in D&I and student affairs. My understanding is prior to me having the interim CDO role, Sherry Clark or someone from D&I did the D&I piece, and I still did student affairs. And I can tell you I've had 3 faculty members reach out to me just from that one speech I gave right before the semester started that want to get involved and do more and have experience doing diversity training at other campuses and want to see if they can bring programs to their classrooms, their colleges, and to the students. So I don't think that's necessarily what you're asking, but that's sort of what our interface has been, that I'm understanding as a person doing the job for 6 weeks with faculty directly. And I don't know if this is worthwhile, but we talk, I'm going to put her on the spot, talk about how we onboard staff in student affairs along the spectrum of big topics. We do a multi-day training. So I'll let her do that. The other thing I will say is that every staff member in student affairs has to attend diversity events on both semesters every single year. So that's 400, give or take, folks who are not faculty, I know it's not a question, that go to a lot of them, and most of those programs that we really point them to, and we curate that a bit, are done with students. So they're in spaces with students, learning or listening to folks around a topic related to diversity and inclusion, and engaging actually with students in a discussion of what happens at those events. So let me just have Jenny talk a little bit about how we onboard staff, and that will at least give you everyone a picture of that piece of it.
So the onboarding within the Division of Student Affairs is pretty much 3 days for everybody, and that doesn't count what they do with the departments. So it's a half day of regular division, and a half day of sexual misconduct training, a half day of team building, a half day of suicide prevention training, and then a full day of social justice training that everybody in the division does. And I would say we probably are the most robust trainers on campus from that perspective. And I also know I have gone through side trainings, which is a week-long diversity training that is offered to faculty and staff.
Right.
So there are a lot of optionals, but I would say I don't think there's any requirements for faculty.
And that happens.
And the other thing I would add to this, although I think this is not necessarily a substitute for some kind of university requirement or initiative in this area. The thing that you need to realize about the university, and especially kind of faculty culture, is the decentered nature of the university. So when I stand here and say there is no university-wide training for faculty in this area, it very well may be the case that there are deans of individual colleges who feel like this is an issue in their college and they do programming for their faculty or departments. I mean, we had a very this was fraught, but I really was pleased to work up in the English department a couple of years ago. We were going through the process of deciding where we were going to hire some new faculty members, and those conversations usually create these wars in departments where faculty are finding we need to hire someone who does this or someone who does this, and we just came to a decision as a department that we were going to do 2 faculty hires. We did them this past year, and that it was more important to us to diversify our faculty than it was to do a hire in any particular area, which was a kind of group decision and a kind of compromise. So these kinds of conversations are taking place in some departments and some colleges, but there is not university-wide training.
And Senator Randall as well, we were in a 5-Senate meeting the other day with a person from HR, and things are being discussed, so I would recommend that you maybe reach out to Administrative or Classified Senate and investigate a little further and see what we can do on our end to get things moving in that direction. So we have 7 more minutes. Show of hands who else has questions.
Olivia had a question.
Olivia and Eleanor, okay? So those will be our last 2. Olivia, you go ahead.
I had a question also about the diversity training or cultural competency courses. It is not possible to place a university-wide requirement within Tier 2. Would it be possible to put mandatory subjects that need to be covered in syllabus for Tier 2 courses that fit under?
Well, I think that's the route we're going to go, and I didn't say this. I mean, it would be possible to add a university-wide requirement in this. I just think what those of us who are involved in Faculty Senate and University Curriculum Council think it's going to be a much stronger possibility to get something accomplished if we take a look at something that we already have. And I think that, of course, it would be great for people to come forward with recommendations for things that, should be on the syllabus. I mean, and it's not going to be, specific. I mean, it's not going to be like, every one of these courses should read Malcolm X and Bell Hooks. But again, think in the way that we are told we have to think these days in terms of learning objectives. What kinds of things would you want to see people coming out of that class with? So, I know this is difficult, but I know that students do have representatives on the University Curriculum Council. I don't know if any of them are involved in the general education subcommittee, but if you have ideas along those lines, send them to me and I'll make sure they get passed on to UCC. But I think before we go too far down that road, I think you need to hold me accountable to get back to you about what those objectives actually are already. Another thing here, again, sometimes the best solution to a problem is not sort of creating new things, but enforcing things that we already have. So for all I know, we already have a good set of objectives there, but we're not doing a good job of making sure that courses do those things. Or another thing is we don't always do a good job of making it clear to students how the work that they're doing in that class fulfill those objectives. And I can give you an example, and I think this is probably a controversial one, but a lot of ways in which students in the university fulfill their cross-cultural perspective requirement is through the study of a foreign language. Now, I suspect for a lot of people who are looking for cultural competency things, that's not going to cut it. Perhaps, but I think that there is an argument that could be made where someone could talk to you about the way in which a foreign language requirement is a perfect way to increase cultural sensitivity or awareness that there are people in the world who don't even think with the same words that you do. Now, do we do a good job in most foreign language classes of where that is fulfilling the requirement of letting students know, hey, one of the reasons why you're doing this is to make you more culturally confident or sensitive? Not necessarily. So part of this might not be sort of creating new stuff so much as pressures and initiatives to get people to be more explicit about the ways in which the things that they are teaching are contributing to this goal. But if nobody knows it's happening, then that's clearly a problem. Eleanor?
So mine is less of a question, more of an observation from this conversation that's occurring. And my concern from my own constituents' viewpoint is I, in my own experience, have had more experiences with Title IX accusations or the Offices of Institutional Equity, not, in my personal experience, not between students, but between a student and a faculty member. Mm-hmm. And my concern is that we have faculty who are not trained, who their training is not a priority at this moment, then enforcing this for our students as mandatory reporters or as the people who are then going to be educating them. Mm-hmm. And I applaud the student division. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. I applaud you for your onboarding process and that dedication to that, but my fear is that the faculty are going to remain behind and that cycle of power will continue. Yeah. So that's just an observation of my own, and I encourage you all to continue looking into that.
Well, I would completely agree with that, and you're probably aware, I don't know if everyone's aware, but faculty and staff are going through mandatory training from the Title IX office this fall. There is, I was actually quite impressed. I was part of a group that was asked to sort of pilot the thing. I did this at home the other night. There's a lot of great sort of scenarios in there, asking questions. I thought it was very good. So this is happening, and I think training is necessary, but we shouldn't fool ourselves that once we've done training, everything's going to be. I mean, because I know you're not saying that at all, but that there's all kinds of things that we need to do. And whether it's issues around sexual misconduct and harassment, or some of these diversity and inclusion issues that we've been talking about this evening, I mean, I think that's the case, very much so. Yeah, I mean, people have different kinds of attitudes about the training, but I think that this thing that they're putting in place looks to me like a very good thing. So I think we should feel good about that.
And I'd have to answer that, follow up with that. When we were at the Breakfast for Progress a couple weeks ago, that's when that modular, the training was discussed, and I was also sent a opportunity to look at the program, and I've taken a look at it, and I haven't finished it yet, but I'm jotting down notes, and it looks good. So things are happening in that regard. So thank you for coming. Are there any other questions? We've hit our max, but if you do have any questions, I'm sure that Joe can answer any emails or anything like that.
Yeah.
For questions, additional things.
I've got an email, and these days I've got about 20 minutes a week carved out to answer all those emails. So I'll try to get to it if you email me, and I will get back to your question, Imani, through Landon about what the learning objectives are, because I think that's a starting point to at least take a look at that and say, okay, what's missing here? Okay, thank you.
And before we move on to roll call, I would like to say that there was a lot of discussion tonight, and I'm really grateful that all of you participate, or those who did participate, you participated. But just remember that there were a lot of action items that were thrown out there tonight, so don't be afraid to follow up with the Academic Affairs Commission on academic matters, or if you want a project, run for it. A lot of what was discussed were platform points from the executives and those who were not everyone who was elected, but those people. So really, don't let any of this die down. Follow it. We want to see bills be happening, and a lot of these can be action items. And I'll save some other things from my report about what we envision presentations being this year. So we'll move on to roll call. If the Chief of Staff would please call roll.
President Lava.
Present.
Vice President Schneider.
Present.
Treasurer Woods.
President.
Commissioner Trell. Senator Capwell. Senator Graber.
President.
Senator Saunders. President. Senator Owens.
President.
Senator Rises.
Present.
Senator Torno. President. Senator DeVille.
Proxy.
Senator Holbrook.
Present.
Senator Madison.
President.
Senator Manline.
Present.
Commissioner Evans.
Present.
Senator Ashley.
President.
Commissioner Ramlow.
Present.
Commissioner Mamone. Commissioner Opuku.
Present.
Senator Hartman.
Present.
Commissioner Shannon.
Present.
Senator Ayers.
Present.
Senator Cruz.
Proxy.
Senator Hajmandi.
Proxy.
Senator Miller.
Proxy.
Senator Leaker.
Present.
Commissioner Freight. Senator Myrich.
Proxy.
Senator Collins. Commissioner Lundy.
Present.
Senator Sloat.
Present.
Senator Jones. Senator Jackson.
Proxy.
Senator Harder.
Present.
Senator Fune.
Present.
Senator Eliopoulos.
Present.
Senator Cromwell. Senator Miller.
Present.
Senator Felt.
Present.
Senator Deering.
Proxy.
Senator Randall.
Present.
Commissioner Burke.
Present.
Senator Hurd.
Present.
Senator Reed.
Present.
Senator Kiefer.
Present.
Commissioner Clare.
Present.
Senator Schneider.
Present.
Senator Williams.
Present.
And Clerk Broshman.
Okay. Thank you. Can you let me know what quorum is? Thanks. We will move on to additions to the agenda. Are there any additions to the agenda this evening? Seeing none, we'll move forward to approval of the previous meeting minutes. These are the meeting minutes from the September 13th meeting. Is there any discussion? Any changes? Any motion? All those in favor of adopting the previous meeting minutes? Aye. I'm sorry, I missed that. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Abstentions. Okay, minutes passed. No new old business. They're just minutes. There's no old business. Now to new business. We have two resolutions under the unanimous consent agenda. For those who don't remember our first meeting, that was to pass everything together. So I will, do I hear a motion? No, I'll do it. I move to adopt resolution 20 and 21 under the unanimous consent agenda. 17, 18, sorry. All those in favor of adopting the consent agenda, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions. Okay, resolution 17, 18, 17 and 17, 18, 18 pass. Okay. No.
Do you want to say their names real quick?
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. So they are. Yeah, Nicole.
Okay, so the first one was to appoint Anna Durda. Am I saying her name right? There's Anna. I've known Anna working with her on WPA for the last year. She is going to be great on the off-campus commission, so there she is. Say hi to her later. All right, and the second one was to appoint Harry Eldridge to the International Affairs Commission, and he was on, there he is. He was on Student Senate last year, did a great job. Karen fully believes in him as well, so he is going to do great. Say hi to him afterwards, too.
Okay, so moving on to resolution 17, 18, 19, a resolution to remove a duty of the Chief Justice and add it to the Clerk of Court. Whereas the judicial panel is tasked with supplying interpretations of the rules and procedures. Okay, primary sponsor, Clerk of Court Barachka, prepare her proxy.
I am. So this one, as it stands now, the Chief Justice is to ensure that the Senate Constitution and rules and procedures are upheld in all Senate proceedings. The issue therein lies the Chief Justice does not come to Senate meetings unless there's a special case, and the Clerk of Court does. So we met as a panel and decided that duty be moved from under my jurisdiction to under the jurisdiction of Alexis. So that's all that would say.
Perfect, and Walter is the Chief Justice is the secondary sponsor, and you don't have any additional comment on that deal. Okay, is there any discussion on the resolution? Seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution passes. Resolution 17, 18, 20, a resolution to remove a duty of the judicial panel and add it to the historian. Whereas the judicial panel is tasked. Okay, primary, we'll just go to the secondary spot. Chief Justice Miller.
This one is saying, well, the rules and procedures outlined that the judicial panel is to ensure that Senate proceedings, media coverage, and actions are documented and preserved. And that was before we added the historian, who, that's like the purpose of a historian. So we met as a panel and voted to move that from our jurisdiction to the jurisdiction of the Senate historian.
Is there any discussion on the resolution? Yes, Senator Holbrook.
I have a quick question about our historian. Well, I can talk to you about it later.
Alright.
Okay.
I'm just curious where everything's housed, but it's probably everywhere, so.
It is right now. He's working on it. It's a mess.
Awesome.
But an organized mess.
Any other discussion on the resolution? Seeing none. All those in favor of the resolution, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Resolution passes. Resolution 171821, a resolution to create a regulatory attendance policy for all judicial panel members. Whereas the judicial panel is tasked with supplying
Second.
Secondary sponsor, Chief Justice Millen.
So, as it currently stands, panel members have absolutely no attendance policy. So, in theory, according to the rules and procedures, so long as they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, they can miss all the meetings, and that's a problem. So, we discussed that there should be an addition to the rules and procedures that hold us accountable for attending judicial panel meetings so that we can oversee all of your processes. So that's what this one's outlined.
Perfect. Is there any discussion on the resolution? Yes, Commissioner Burke.
I was just wondering, will it work like Senate does? Are there points given? How does a judicial
So, the issue with the point system, and that's something that we discussed at our meeting, we can't have proxies. So, Senate members can have proxies and not accumulate points. So ours, the way we have it outlined, is that the justice in question that will be missing a meeting will notify the clerk of court within 24 hours of that meeting, and then the clerk of court will notify the Chief Justice of the list of absences to ensure that, we're a quorum at the meeting so that there's a purpose of having it. So it's more of a, if you have an excuse, you're excused, than it is anything else.
But does it really keep you from not receiving them? You just have to tell them.
More or less, yeah. It's an accountability thing, so that we can keep track of who's going to be there, so that we don't go to a meeting and, have 3 people show up, and we can't do anything with 3 people.
Mm-hmm.
We're not a quorum. So that's the purpose. And we have it outlined that if you don't notify the clerk of court and you miss 2 meetings, then it could result in no removal. But that's an executive decision and not a panel decision when it comes to justices. That's okay.
Would the Chief Justice give points to the Chief of Staff? Or how would that work? How would the attendance policy work?
There are no points.
Okay.
So it's
Very good.
sorry. It's at the point that someone has missed 2 meetings, I will submit them to the executives to discuss what should be done next. And it would be just like a senator was sent to us for a violation of the attendance policy.
I have a question. So the Rules and Procedures has a subchapter on attendance policy for senators. And it says you can be removed based off your attendance. Now I know it says in this resolution that they can also be removed because of attendance, but shouldn't that also be read in the attendance specific subchapter on attendance, or is it fine in chapter 4, just judicial panel?
There is no
because that's the rules that give the ability for executives to remove someone based off attendances in that attendance chapter of the Rules and Procedures.
The attendance policy is split between 3 chapters.
Okay.
With the addition of this. 2 right now. There's a policy for executive officers, which is outlined in chapter 2. There's a policy for Senate members that's outlined in chapter 5.
Okay.
So there's specific subsections of the chapter, and then this would just be our equivalent of that. And there are already removal of the justice, if you look at the appendix, it already has parts, A through F.
Okay.
So this is just the addition of parts G and H to outline our attendance policy.
Thanks. Senator Ayers.
So seeing as like me, for example, has no idea the extent of the problem you actually have, do you think that this addresses the severity of the issue? Like, is the policy you want us to pass going to do enough to make sure you guys almost always have quorum or not?
the way that we as a panel decided on this, because, like I said, we can't have proxies, we don't have that system set up, because there is no one on the panel except for the clerk of court at this present moment who doesn't have voting rights. So, in the event that someone is missing meeting after meeting, even with excuses, like, they can't be carrying out their duties very effectively if they're not there to discuss everything that is being discussed and there to vote upon things that are being voted on. So this is just the neglect of duty is outlined as an impeachable offense already.
So you think it's strong enough?
Yeah.
Vice Commissioner Cobb.
Is there any check on, does any of this reflection happen outside of the judicial panel? Will executives in the Senate have any say in the final dismissal of an individual?
The dismissal of judicial panel members is entirely an executive decision. They have the referral has to be made, but that final decision to allow a member to remain on the panel or to remove them lies entirely with the executive board of the Senate.
And with any impeachment, you are able to appeal the decision to the full Senate. So impeachment trials used to be a committee and then all of Senate would vote. Now it is for an individual Senate member, and Walter, we'll get into this later, so I won't touch on it as much, but anyone can appeal a decision to the full Senate about their impeachment. Okay. Any other questions on the resolution? Are you ready for the question? Everybody ready to vote? Okay. All those in favor of resolution 17-1821, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstentions? Resolution passes. So, as Nicole and John get the stack set up, just want to reiterate, the Chief Justice will be doing the timer. Each member of Senate has a minute and a half. You are allowed to directly respond to anyone for a length of 30 seconds. If I feel that, we need to go longer on any direct response, it's fine. This is a semi-formal setting. I want everyone to be heard. So we'll stick to the timeline, but if things need to be said, we can extend it if needed. Like I said also, please just raise your name tag until you see your name put up on the board. And if Nicole and John, could you make those colors lighter?
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, no.
I can't hear a lot of people still in the back row, especially like from the back row. Just be a little louder. I want to make sure I get everyone all their comments in the minutes. And just make sure to say your name and your position clearly so I can write down the Thanks.
And I'll call you all when it's time to go for you to speak. Is there anything last names?
I needed
She
more
wanted pink.
options. That's too much. That's
So,
too much.
are you all ready?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. So, I'll start it and say, the purpose of this discussion is to get everyone's feedback about the interim policy on outdoor use space and the freedom of expression policy. Just a little background. The outdoor use space is not a new policy. It is a revised policy. It's been on the books. The expression policy is new. I'll be making clarifying points all night for everyone. I hope all of you have read it a few times because every time I read it, I learn something new. And I think that's a big issue with the policy is people aren't actually reading it and aren't actually dissecting what it means. It is jargon, in a lot of places, so it can be pretty confusing if you don't understand the jargon. But yeah, I would just really recommend after we leave here, if you do have any questions, my door is always open. Set up a one-on-one with me. I met with probably about 4 or 5 of you about it and a few students that aren't on the body, so I want to be able to answer questions for you all. But if anyone would like to start, go ahead and put up your name tag, and the first one I see, I'll call on, and everyone else wait till your name's on the staff. Senator Ayers. Yep, and then Senator Rises, keep up your name tag until you see your name go on the board.
So this is mostly just a question of who acts as the judge in the situation. So it's under the disruption of university operations and activities part, which is the part that everyone just probably wants to talk about. So it says that whatever you're doing conducts that material disrupts university operations or activities. I just wondered who acts as the judge of that.
Is anyone behind me? I believe it's a university official. It hasn't been specifically stated who that university official is. There has been a lot of comment on who is that authority, because, you know.
It's very subjective. One person might think it's not disruptive, and another person might think that you're a bunch of hooligans causing trouble.
Yeah.
So, is that going to be clarified at some point?
It is in the document to be given to the president's office that the language should be changed to say who specifically, that we've already received feedback that should be recommended. I would also recommend, and I should have done that earlier, and for the purpose of this conversation, I would really like some constructive criticism. You can of course say I don't like this policy, but I would really recommend you say I don't like this and this is how I'd like to see it change. So I can actually give things to the president's office, real, almost like rewriting the policy.
So like what I would like to be changed is whoever's going to have this authority, I'd like it to be clear who that person is to me. So if someone comes up to me and says you can't do this and they don't have the authority, I'm not held for something that they don't have the authority to accuse me of anyway.
And that is noted. Thank you. Senator Rises.
So my primary concern with this policy, and I mentioned this to you, Landon, I mentioned this actually to Dusty as well, who's the director of Baker Center at the present moment. My concern is that while demonstrations, rallies, public speech making, ticketing, sittings, marches, protests, and similar assemblies are permitted in outdoor space at the university, this policy doesn't seem to make any allowances or flexibility for two things: protests and events that occur in under 24 hours, because you have to reserve space, even outdoor space. And also all of those activities that might result in students being unsafe, and thus, the university, if they wanted to make the call, like we're going to open an indoor space to these students rather than let them be outside in the winter in 40 degrees, or allow them to be outside in a thunder and lightning storm. Like, there is no allowances made for that either. And so I'm curious as to what that flexibility is going to be like, because at this point, like, the university makes a call to open up an indoor space, and then you've just broken this policy. I don't know how that works.
And I'll touch on, so in the policy, in the freedom of expression policy, in section B, you can still protest and have a demonstration outside that's at an unscheduled event, from my understanding, if the space is not already reserved. So a spontaneous protest can theoretically happen on College Green as long as it's after 5 p.m. That's what the other policy says, and that it's not already been reserved. Now, the question about the indoor space, that's come up many times. I don't have an answer for that. I think, that's where you all come in, of what would you like to see, and this is the forum to have it right now. But as for spontaneous outdoor protests and demonstrations that can still happen, now who's to say, we get into the question again, who is to say that it's disruptive? And there was a question last night at the student, the SLJC open forum about what if we are protesting outside and then a class is like, we want to go outside because it's nice today. And then they go outside and then they're in that space. That, from my understanding of the policy, and anyone can correct me, that class has already reserved a classroom. They already have a reserved space on campus for instruction. And this place, it's almost like finders keepers in my eyes. They're there. The protesters are there. It was not reserved when they got there, and that class did not have it reserved when they were coming out from their class to go outside. So that's my understanding of the policy, and I could be totally wrong, so anyone can correct me. But as for the other part about indoor space, that's why we're all here tonight. Okay. Commissioner Evans.
I would just like to say for people whose ideas may not cover, but this is a generally well-known opinion about this document, but it kind of inhibits the general spirit of process in general. They're supposed to be spontaneous. They're supposed to disrupt. It's like civil disobedience, civil disruption, all that stuff. But there are specific changes and specific questions I do have, like what is considered a reservable space, both inside and outside. What are the limits to those spaces? Since they are not like classrooms with doors and walls, how are you supposed to say, don't go 3 feet beyond this pole or something like that for inside and outside? And then obviously, in section B of freedom of expression in outdoor spaces, in the third paragraph, in the third line, there's a section that says, or prevent others from expressing their views. How do you decide when somebody's overpowering another group? Like if they did reserve this space and everybody has the right to be there, and another, how does this address counter protest? Is what I'm trying to say. Because everybody has it's under constitutionally protected under the First Amendment. Like everyone's freedom of speech, but how do you protect and how do you allow for counter protest within this document?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't write the policy, so I don't know. I just want to be blunt with that. And like I said, I think this is the forum to, for it to happen. And yes, the policy does not at all say what will be done for that. Well, actually, it might. I think it does talk about counter protesters, maybe in another policy. But like I said, this is the forum tonight that if this is your opinion, and it might be the opinion of others, that it does need to state in here what it should say for the protections of counter protesters, then, that's something, if I see a signal from the body that it's something we want to be put in the document as a recommendation to the President's office, I'll put in. As for, and I'll briefly try and answer, like I said, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone. As for what is a reservable space outdoors, policy 2406 specifically lists what's a reservable outside space. Anything else is unreservable. And you can go there, I guess.
Right.
So, an indoor reservable space are classrooms. And at Baker Center, there is a whole long list on the website. Now, if you are a student org and you want to reserve an indoor space, you have to go through org sync. Like for Senate, for example. For Senate, there are 6 individuals who are allowed to reserve rooms. That's why we did things through John for commission meetings. If you want your individual student org, or if you want access to reserve rooms, you have to go through the CIC, fill out a form, say you want to be reserved rooms, then you get contracted with Vet Services, then you say, okay, I want all these people to have access to rooms, to be able to reserve them. Depending on the room, it's free. Larger rooms like Walter Rotunda, the multi-purpose room, and the ballroom and Baker Theater, they cost. If you're a student not affiliated with the university, there's a fee of $100, I think. It's a lot more.
Space?
Yeah.
It depends on the space.
Okay, depends on the space. And you also reserve outdoor space, some of the outdoor space on the the Baker not OIT, but virtual EMS. And then any classrooms is through a program called Astra. So those are what I can tell you for what is a reservable space. But anything else, like I keep saying, this is the forum for you all to throw out ideas for what it should say. So I hope that at least answers. And like I said, I didn't write this, so.
Megan, I don't think we expect you to answer every
Okay,
question.
good.
Don't worry, like, we
Okay,
understand that you're not.
Yeah. So, Amani, do we need to clarify anything else, or? Okay, we can maybe come back to it if we have to. Commissioner Ramon?
I expect you to
Thanks.
So, I guess I'll say something nice about the policy. I like the indoor space policy. You talk louder. I like the indoor space policy. I think I like it just because I think the bad side to it is really, 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 really bad. Once you picture like the top of Baker, like a protest gets a little bit rowdy and there's like conflicting things, and somebody rolls over the banister or something horrific like that. So for that reason, I like the indoor policy. The outdoor policy, I also like. I think the outdoor policy is pretty good. However, I do have a question regarding how university reserves the right to limit the use of some outdoor spaces to university employees and registered students. Now, the reason I have a question about this is because the Government Affairs Commission has been looking at this Free Speech Act, this proposed in the Ohio legislation, and the basis of this is incidents where speakers have been invited to speak at a university, and then when it comes time for them to speak, people are very nervous about the kind of emotions they're going to inflame, and they cancel the speaker. That's soft. If you want to have the hard conversations, you should be ready to have the hard conversations. If we're going to stand up as an institution and say this is a place where we can have the hard conversations, we can't be afraid of somebody's idiotic words coming onto this campus. You can defend that with your own righteous words. But I don't like that part of it. Otherwise, I think it's a great policy. That's all. I reserve the balance of my time.
Thank you. Commissioner Burke?
I was just wondering if it was possible to see the consequences of not following the policy. What would happen there? I would like that to be outlined, because I'm talking about civil disobedience. If I feel like I need to break this policy, I feel like I should also be informed about the consequences of my behavior. So that would just be something that.
And that's been noted to me as well about what happened. The large question is it is an interim policy now. What does that mean? What can happen to me? Things like that.
Yeah.
So.
I think we can all agree it needs to be clarified.
Landon, can I?
Yeah, you can respond.
There's another policy that we haven't actually mentioned or discussed. It's online on the policy manual under new and revised interim policies, and that's the one about banning individuals or groups who are on campus and do not following a certain set of a certain code of conduct. And number one on the forbidden conduct for this new this interim banning policy is a person's continued presence on property owned, leased, or operated by Ohio University may be restricted provided their conduct is in violation of number one, active or passive, willful or deliberate obstruction, disruption, or occupation of building entrances, walks, stairways, passageways, approaches, classrooms, offices, parking areas, auxiliary rooms, or any other space that impedes implementation of authorized programs and functions of Ohio University.
What was that policy called?
That's called policy 02.002 on banning.
It's old. It's not new. Right?
It's a draft.
Right. This is a draft that was approved for interim use. And maybe Landon can explain exactly the time frame around that.
So, as a reviewer of policy, I have not been communicated to about the interim policy. It was probably before my time as president. I have reached out to the general counsel's office about, can we still publicly comment on the interim policy because it's in interim effect. I don't know, I have not received a response, but I think it would be potentially wise to have that policy referenced as it's another like loophole to jump through, but if you look at the policy, there are some sections where it says, look at this policy, and I think that would be wise to have in this policy if anyone. I think that's what kind of, Zach, was that what you were getting at?
Yeah, it's just that policy actually outlines just a little bit more, I guess one avenue that could be taken if you do disrupt, which is what the freedom of expression policy is about. The one option is banning from campus for a certain period of time, which I think really could be a very useful tool. But, depends on who you're talking about banning.
And that policy is also extremely helpful because it specifically says what 7 individuals can ban you from the university, and that's kind of what I've been hearing tonight is, who is the authority figure to say something is being disruptive. And I have heard that the policy does not, some people do not want to include specific people into the policy, because then, what if that person might not be available or something like that. But then my counter argument is, well, there's a precedent in the policy to list people who can do, make decisions as a university official. So I will put that in the notes to send to the president's office about referring some lines of the policy in the freedom of expression to refer it back to the banning policy about what's disruptive. Okay, Senator Felt. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
Just as a point of clarification and information, was it the public statement about the policy or the policy that referenced Charlottesville? Was it when I was reading the public statement or the policy, there was a reference to Charlottesville? I'm just trying to get clarification on if it was. Okay, so it was probably the public statement. So, just as a clarification of when this policy will be enacted, I personally have no issue with the policy as it stands interim. But when it comes down to actual passing a permanent policy, there needs to be some form of clear reference to current policies that say this is the policy you can reference in regards to steps to reserve spaces. I also feel as though that the policy should state that instead of groups that are considered disruptive, maybe take a little more concrete stance, and any groups that bring things that could be used as weapons, or if they bring shields or helmets to a protest, I feel as though that a high university should take a more strict stance and say that we do not allow aggressive behaviors on campus to basically prohibit, specifically in the policy. If we're going to limit expression in general, might as well limit the expression of aggressive protesting.
Senator Warner.
My largest thing that I would like to address right now is about the reservation spaces. I agreeing with that the statement earlier about the spirit of protesting. The reservation of spaces just does not seem well thought out at all. I think a much better way to have gone about that is to have areas in and outside that are naturally areas where you can protest whenever you want. Because when it comes down to it, when there's another issue like the immigration ban or something like that, there are going to be protests again, and they're not going to follow this policy. I think just putting it up there and saying that this is the policy now is very short-sighted, and I think the long-term ramifications of it are going to look very bad for the university. I think a lot of students are unjustly going to be punished, and it just seems not very thought out at all. that would really reconsider the reservation because it will not be followed, I can guarantee.
Thank you. Senator Felt.
I'm going to echo almost everything that Sam over there said. I believe that it was very smart for President Nellis to issue a quite overreaching policy when nobody was on campus to try and find some common ground. But I think there's also common ground that we can find as a Senate body as well. Things as such as saying that yes, the protest in Baker was disruptive, because that it was, whether it was constitutionally protected, which I'm happy that they were all acquitted of their charges. I think that this overreaching policy, as Sam just noted, sets a very, very dangerous precedent for the university as a whole. I think that the best way to figure this out is to possibly sit down with administrators at a working meeting and the people that have developed this. I know our general counsel played a pivotal role in the development of this, and to find a way that we can protest for when you do want to protest, because I know that people who do engage in active protests on campus do so in quite a peaceful manner. I don't think there's ever been any violent protests on campus. And I think that the university actually does a great job of fostering debate here at OU. I just believe that this may be a dangerous precedent to set. I also feel that moving forward, people will be discouraged and scared for action.
Sorry, that was time.
That's
sorry, Nick. On to Senator Ashley.
Okay. Back to the disruption. I know we said earlier that we were unsure of who has the power to say what's disruptive or not, or unclear of who that person is. My question is it going to be a single person, or is it a group of people that decides this, or how does that work?
I don't know. The policy, as it's been described, was intended to be vague, in a sense, so people could offer this public opinion as it is, like we're doing right now. But no, I don't know. And the policy, I mean, it's whatever the policy says is what they would do. So, and it only says university officials. So, if it said this group of people, then that's what they would do. But as of right now, like we all know, it says university officials. So, thanks. Senator Rises.
Yeah. So I first would just want to respond to Nick's shade that this was an overreaching policy issued when students weren't on campus. I do agree that maybe its introduction missed a few important marks, but I don't really think that it's incredibly overreaching. I mean, the Post wrote about this, and talking to administrators around campus, you know that other universities around Ohio have similar, if not stricter, policies, much stricter. And the fact that we've been invited to give feedback and potentially open this up to a lot of flexibility is a really awesome thing. I keep saying that if it had been called the use of indoor space policy, no one would have paid attention. But it was called the freedom of expression policy, so of course we have to debate that. So my question is actually about next steps. I know that Graduate Student Senate is considering legislation to call for a collective
working group.
A working group, thank you, that involves members of all of the shared governance bodies at OU. I think that's really smart, and I'd be interested in jumping on that bandwagon, so to speak, so that when we move forward, putting together a list of recommendations as a Senate body, we can do that in tandem with other Senate bodies.
I will answer that. It's been talked about with the 5 Senates, and we're moving forward with the working group.
Landon,
I'd like to respond. 30 seconds.
I think that, especially in a time of a lot of political discourse in this country, especially with the introduction of a lot of legislation from our president or executive orders, not everything that is legal is correct. I think that we also have to take into consideration that our state representatives are introducing a bill that would not allow any university to create such a policy because they feel that free speech is already limited. Now, while I'm not saying that is the correct thing to do, I'm saying that everybody needs to come together and create a foundation.
So bad. We'll move on to Commissioner Burke.
I just wanted to bring up something that was kind of talked about being, like Sam was saying about giving a certain space that is always able to be protested. I feel like that goes like a space that would always be able to be used. I feel like that, like other people were saying, kind of goes against what a protest is supposed to be doing. And if we were to put that in the policy, I think it would create like, oh, here's the corner of campus to be able to, have your whatever you're gonna protest. So I just would strongly suggest not doing that part.
Can I directly reply?
You can.
I would just like to say I 100% agree with you. The reason I'm saying this is because for some reason we're having to debate this whole thing, and I think it's kind of ridiculous. But the reason I'm saying that is some way of me gritting my teeth and eating in the middle. But I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think putting sort of barriers on protesting in general is extremely unjust. But yeah, that's all I wanted. I wanted to clarify that point.
I want to just respond to both of this.
You can.
Okay, so I really feel like the best way to go about this, if we're trying to think of like concrete steps moving forward that we can present, is to kind of say that students can use university buildings. They don't need to be able to reserve these spaces as long as they follow Section D, where it's like, here are all the ways you could possibly disrupt the university operations and activities, and as long as a protest, anything that students feel the need to react to doesn't impede upon those, then it should be allowed. So as we're all talking about open spaces, we should maybe add that.
Thank you. Is Nick? Yeah.
I was just going to go off of what Zach said in terms of moving forward. Having a policy, and there are people who are echoing this, that does set restrictions is, in the terms of America, very unconstitutional. We're a nation of freedom of speech and expression. I know that I've heard from some of my friends and someone that I live in a dorm with saying that protests can be disruptive and that why should I have my day impeded upon by a protest? And I'm like, okay, so as a historical context, most of the things in America didn't happen unless people said something about it. So especially right now where we have a lot of hate groups in this nation that are inciting violence and hate and causing harm to civilians, I think it's very important that especially students in a historically forward-thinking, whether you're left or right, forward-thinking university where we include all groups of people. And we should not try to impede upon their constitutional rights and allow everyone, so long as they don't speak out in terms of hate and bigotry and just some form of I'm better than you, as long as people are constructive, everyone should have a voice without any impeding upon their constitutional rights. Reserve the balance.
Commissioner Harder.
So mine's kind of more of a response to Sam than Sam. But I was just gonna say, like, OU kind of projects itself as a very like welcome to ideas kind of campus, and I feel like with this kind of going on, that I don't know, kind of makes it seem like that's not so much the case. And honestly, if you look back at history, like some very successful protests are spontaneous, and they do kind of cause a disruption, not like big disruption, but like an inconvenience, because that's why you get attention. So I was just kind of saying I agree with both of them, that we should be allowed to have them.
Thank you. Senator Corner.
First, I'd like to say I really agree with Senator Miller's response. And secondly, I'd like to say this bill in general, I think our policy before it goes, I think we as a body should not allow it to continue unless it is iron tight with what it is saying on who is being held accountable, what the problems are afterwards, because at this stance it gives the university a lot of power when it comes to protesting and how it is handled. not okay in any way. And I think it would be a disservice to our constituents if we were to let it pass in any way as is and not stand up for it.
Thank you. PR Director Defaba.
I think ultimately this policy would create a chilling effect on this campus for people who feel like started to protest and really believe on the cause that they're standing up for. And I think just because of that, because I guess what Senator Torbo was saying, it really just gives the university a lot of power in its vagueness. So because this policy isn't direct in what it's trying to say and imply, it leaves it open for a lot of interpretations that gives the university the ability to come back and say, well, this is how we interpret it, and so this is how we're going to apply this to the situation. Ultimately, I think it's silly that this is even a thing right now. I think that protesting and freedom of speech is like very open, and it should be on a college campus. And if anything, we should have a policy that enacts a chilling effect on hate speech on campus.
So that's been half an hour. We do have a few more people on our list.
Motion to
If
oh, go ahead.
you can, yeah, continue.
Motion to extend debate, 15 minutes.
No, we'll vote on the motion on the floor to extend debate 15 minutes. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstentions? Okay. The motion will, we have 15 more minutes. And we'll continue with the minute and a half. And I will go to Sam Miller. Yeah?
Yeah.
You directly responded, but this is your first time speaking.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah. So I just want to say it's really important that we also take into account that this policy is a direct response to how silly the university looked when this ruling came down from the Baker 70. Almost everything in this policy were the direct things that Judge Grace cited for the reason that these kids got caught. And while I understand it's important because the policy before was so vague, this almost seems to be kind of a retaliation. They're trying to cover all of their bases when it comes to this, and I think that we as a body need to recognize that because Baker 70 are our constituents, even though some of them have graduated, but we also need to keep that in mind. I really just want to reiterate that I think that students should be able to use indoor buildings. We pay for them. Our tuition dollars go to keep the lights on. And as long as we are not doing anything that is a disruption, then there's no reason the university should be limiting our freedom of speech. So as long as we follow Section D, there's no reason that we shouldn't be able to use these spaces.
Thank you. Commissioner Ramon.
I just want to agree with Sam on what you said earlier about trying to focus on what describes disruptive behavior. I think that's probably key here, because everybody's going to go, what's disruptive? We make a very clear outline of what is disruptive. Okay, yeah, you can't, bring like weapons or anything like that. Like, you look at the videos of Charles, what the heck was going on here? Like, if you watch his videos, you're like, how on earth did that happen? So you have to implement a policy that doesn't allow that type of thing to happen, but allows for people to change ideas. And the second thing I wanted to maybe say was that the vagueness right now about the discipline is probably a good thing. Because what it's going to say if they have anything, if we go there and say, what are you what we're going to do to us if we going to say up to expulsion? And that's all it's going to say. Everybody's going to go, right, I'm going to get expelled. Probably better off with the vagueness allowing for discretion.
Thank you. Senator Fell.
I just wanted to echo what Sam was saying, Senator Miller, excuse me. I believe that all to be true. I feel like this is kind of like too easy to draw this to be a response from the Baker 70. But I also feel that we're in this room, there's like an inherent belief that the university is just out to curb our free speech. But I think that's not the case at all. I believe that a lot of our administrators would actually line up with our beliefs on certain political issues. Or our constituents' beliefs, as this is a nonpartisan body. But I think there just needs to be a little bit more give and go here, and I don't think that we can come to all the solutions, and I don't think the administration can either. But I think that the Bobcat 70, although constitutionally correct, we got to think of the university as what it is. It's a giant machine. You have front room there. You have offices there. You got to look at it from their point of view as well. That's it. Thank you, gavel.
Well, you're fine. Commissioner Evans.
I think something Nick was maybe saying. We need to keep in mind that for as much as we are putting these in to either curb people's right to protest or protect people's feelings from having, or protect people from having too aggressive of people protesting, we need to respect the fact that everybody has the equal right to say what they want. For as many people as we don't want on this campus spewing hate, making people feel uncomfortable, threatening their safety, we also have to respect the fact that we can't just have a one-sided, we can't just have a one-sided protest going on. We can't curb it so much towards one particular part. I don't think that this document is currently doing so. I'm just saying it's something that we need to keep in mind.
Thank you. Commissioner Burke.
So my question was about the section D. Maybe someone else who hasn't read section D could probably help explain this to me. But do these outlined disruptions only have to do with protests that already have reservable spaces? Like, so I'm thinking Take Back the Night for materially impedes the flow of pedestrian or really terrible at saying this word, vehicular traffic. So if we had already said with the Athens Police Department we're going to have this rally, does that suspend this disruption from occurring? So if you don't have a set up, you haven't said like, oh, we're going to have this rally protest, are you allowed to have it so long as it doesn't violate D? Or, yeah, okay. That's it.
I'm sorry. Senator Rises.
Yeah, I have a point of clarification, I guess. Is anybody or Landon, are you taking notes of like all of the specific things that have been listed? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there has been nothing that I have not already heard.
Awesome.
So Amal is taking minutes. She is fantastic at her job. And you all are fantastic at reading the minutes and getting to me with these responses. I'll make a motion here in a couple when we're done to gauge opinion on a matter, but we'll continue on. So thanks. Yeah.
No, I was just clarifying for me because I hadn't gotten everything. No, my question is about kind of what Amani was touching on in regards to ensuring that when we're picturing who's allowed to protest or who's allowed to be occupying a space versus who isn't, we aren't trying to skew it towards certain groups. But I am curious if it would be possible to think about, I don't know, creating a policy where there are some groups, right? Because this, even individuals not affiliated with the university may reserve and use available spaces, outdoor spaces. I'm wondering if we want to go so far as to consider, well, some groups have much more violent rhetoric or much more hateful rhetoric than others. Does that move towards like interfering with the ability of students to participate in academic activities? And then do we even want to talk about what it would mean to say, like, look, these people who are saying these things, like, they can't be inside a space. I bring that up because Nick brought up the violent violence. So.
Yeah, and I'm going to directly respond as an individual and not the president of Senate, but I think it would be extremely unwise to specifically list what individuals or organizations are not allowed on this campus to express themselves. And I reserve the balance of my time. I think I see Senator Cornell up there.
If we are going to eventually pass this policy, I would just like to really urge the university to, when we start to see the storm of a protest coming, as it is often very easy to spot, I would recommend the university put out some sort of release noting this policy to the student body and not hiding it in back corners, sort of under like section so and so, this that, and make it apparent to students so that they're at least aware of what they're getting into when they are enacting civil disobedience.
Thank you. Senator Miller.
I just have one more thing that I would like people to consider looking at this policy is this disproportionately going to affect different areas of our constituency? We've talked a lot about the protests that happened and think of the people who were there. Is the university going to retaliate against certain groups of people because they are protesting because they believe that directly affects them? Think about that a little bit. And I'm wondering, I don't know, just like, food for thought on that. Something that just occurred to me is just like, in this administration, the presidential administration, we're going to see a lot of policies that could be affecting our international communities and our minority communities as well. If they decide to gather, is this disproportionately going to affect them? So just think about that as well.
Thank you, Senator Miller. I don't see anyone else up there. Is there? What's that? Oh, we're not voting on anything. Okay. No. So I'll just say something before we move on, since we do have 5 more minutes left on the clock. I would strongly recommend that we, follow a timeline of how we would like to get things done. So as of right now, we have a month till policy recommendations need to be sent to the president's office. I'm receiving stuff, but I don't want to be the only one involved in the conversation. I'll send my stuff on to their office once I receive student input, and once you've received your constituency input and given to me. But I would like to gauge the opinion of the body to see if anyone would like, because at the end of the day, we're going to be proposing a bill about what our official stance is on this policy. We have plenty of time to do that. I want to make it right. But in order to do that, I don't want to be the only one involved in the conversation. I know everyone in the body is super overwhelmed with work, but I just want to see if it would interest anyone to set up a working group within our body to talk about changes, because there's a lot been going on tonight, and we need actual action items to go into that, and I don't feel comfortable being the only person doing that. So by head nod or whatever, does anyone think that would be a wise idea for the body? Vice President Schneider.
Are you talking about creating a different new committee, or just saying like Tuesday night at 8 we're going to discuss the second draft we have of this?
We can, of course, we can say if we want a special committee, if we want, it's only the duration we can say is till the 20th and then it goes away. Or we can set up a working group that is more of an informal group. If you all know your parliamentary procedure, you may do whatever you want from this point on. I'm not going to tell you all what to do. But if I hear any type of, I want to hear from you, I'm not going to make the unilateral decision to create something that you all do not want. Senator Ayers.
I do have a question. So is there a part of the Senate that already exists that functions as sort of like a check on university policies that are created?
No, it is my duty to get it involved, because I received the emails. I think it would be wise down the road to create a standing committee on it. I don't think that's right now. All the other senates have a standing committee on this, the very foundation of what university policies are. We do not. That's because our standing committees are historically for internal practices. External things are handled by our commissions, but I think this is a issue that is larger than one of our 12 commissions. But like I said, I'm not going forward with creating a special. perfectly in the executive's power to create a special committee, but I will not do so unless I hear any type of motion or any kind from the Senate body. So we can move on with our agenda. John, do you have something to say?
Yeah, I feel like it'd be both beneficial and practical if we had a working meeting on this to create a legislation, as President Lama mentioned, to create a bill that could go to, Provost Scutner and the president's desk.
So, like I said, if throughout the meeting, if there's any type of motion, you may do so, but just know your parliamentary procedure. Moving on with the agenda. Oh yeah, is there a motion to end debate?
Zach just had something. Yeah, I had
Zach.
clarification. I didn't quite understand based on the last thing you guys talked about. Are you talking about you're talking about setting up a working meeting within student senate body, apart from a potential working group with all the senates?
At the end of the day, we will be making a bill
Okay.
on this.
Okay, gotcha.
And how things usually go, it's the executive team that makes the bill. But I don't want it to just be the executive team who's got a bill. I want it to be those who are really interested and give the time to do it. But thanks. So I heard a motion to end debate. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of ending debate?
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstentions? Ending debate. And we'll go into our regular agenda. And we will start with Minority Affairs for their report. I know Carolyn has a proxy for this evening, so that is fine. Does Senator Leaker have an update, or would she like to say anything to the body?
As of right now, no, I don't have anything to say.
I would remind everyone that they have a vacancy, a few vacancies, and Hannah can, if you know people who might be interested, just connect with Hannah. Moving on to off-campus. I do not see our off-campus commissioner here this evening. Our newly appointed senator had to step out, and the other off-campus senator is not here. They're both at the pre-law fraternity recruitment. That's where they're at this evening. Do you have anything to update on behalf of the off-campus commission?
I didn't bring my notes because I didn't know they weren't going to be here, so no.
Okay. They're working on a community picnic right now, and you'll be seeing probably a budget about that soon. I overheard. Yeah. Residence life. Commissioner Lemon Morris.
Hello. So I have a few things. So, LaRon and I attended the CMCC meeting a couple weeks ago, which Lydia touched on a little bit about the reusable clamshell cases. Just another thing that some of you may be interested in is they are redoing Shively, and they're taking some suggestions on what you want to see happen to it. So if there's some kind of food you really dig in and you think that it should put in there, just let me know and I will let them know. I have a meeting with Pete it's going to talk to you next week, and also with someone else as well. Sorry, who else is going to my meeting? Pete?
Yes, Brianna might be going to your meeting.
Okay.
I need to set you up, so yes.
So if you guys have any suggestions that you want me to bring up to that, or if you want to tag along also, you can come. We are in the works for an open forum about decentralized mailroom locations, just to kind of educate students on why they transitioned into this, because a lot of people just don't even know why, and they're kind of annoyed about it. So yeah, and I also have 2 open positions, one for East Green and one for West Green, so if you know anyone living on those greens, send them my way.
Thank you, Madam Commissioner. Commissioner Clear for SAP.
Yeah, so we currently have 6 auditors. That's really exciting. The last time y'all heard from me, I had 1. So thank you all to everyone who sent me names. They've all been so great. We're gonna be setting up a meeting with all of them next week, so we're gonna get started. Hopefully we'll be able to audit a lot of money back. But we're still trying to find at least 2 more. I would like to have 3 to 4 more though. But if you know anyone else, keep looking out for that. Our first GBM was last Sunday, September 10th, and that's when we kind of rolled out our sustainability initiative.
Lydia was there, she was super helpful. If people ask, we are no longer funding plastic utensils or plates or anything like that. So make sure to keep a lookout for that. We did have to say no to a few budget items, but it's all for the good of the earth.
No styrofoam.
No styrofoam, don't even ask for it. So a new thing that we focused on a lot at the retreat was that we want to have a lot of the commissions going to the events that we're funding. So I'll be writing all of our funded events on the calendar as they come in if they're on campus, and that's the calendar in the back that's right behind the SAC desks. It's been really helpful so far when asking like when things are due, when our GBMs are, so I think it'll also be helpful for having different events on there. And then I'll be sending out our events to commissioners after our general body meetings if any events pertain to your commission. Finally, there will be another SAC funding workshop next Sunday, October 1st with Eleanor and Charlotte. It'll be from 3 to 4 p.m. in Baker 230. So if anyone missed that or they need a refresher on how to apply to SAC, please send them there. It'll be really helpful.
Can you repeat the date?
Sunday, October 1st from 3 to 4 p.m. in Baker 230. And I'll say another reminder next week.
Thank you, Commissioner Clear. University Life, Commissioner Harder.
Yeah, so 2 weeks or 2 Fridays ago, we raised about $580 for Puerto Rico table. So but we're going to be doing it again tomorrow from 12 to 5 like we've been talking about. So if you guys are free, please stop by. That's with the Latino Student Union, and we're also trying to get other groups involved. So we're kind of working on that. And then we were contacted by a former ULEF member, Tyler Daniels, and he wants to donate $100 a month for the food pantry in Baker. So we're also working on like figuring out what kind of food he's going to donate, saving that, all that stuff. And then just kind of in the works, we're like trying to educate people about the policy, kind of like everybody. And then we're working on cigarette buckets for on campus, so how you have them on Court Street and they're all decorated and pretty. People don't really want to walk all the way to Court Street if you're on the South Green, so maybe just kind of working about like getting that going, and then like a late night loop for campus too, so talking to transportation services and stuff like that. But that's kind of later on.
Women's Affairs Commissioner Burke.
Okay, well, first thing is we are, like, Black Affairs inspired us to work on our social media, so I have one of my senators working on that, so I'll definitely let you know when it's back working again, but look out for that. We're creating a health pamphlet. You may have heard about it last year. The commission tried to get it going, and basically the idea is we're going to contact all of the health services in Athens, and we will send them a survey, and then they're going to send us back their responses, and we'll create a pamphlet that has all that information on it, and hopefully we can be distributing that everywhere on campus so that everyone can be making an informed decision about where they're going with their health care. Also, we are going to have a survey that'll probably come out this weekend, possibly either tomorrow or Friday. And it's about the Take a Tampon, Leave a Tampon campaign. So when I have that finalized, I'm definitely going to email everyone, and I will urge you all to take the survey regardless of your gender and then send it to a group me you're in or another organization, because I'm thinking the goal is to have 500 responses. I kind of think with the work of Senate we could have it be a lot higher, but that's the goal. So I could really use your guys' help when I get that. And I'll give you more information kind of about what it is in the email. Also, like I said last week, but really messed it up, a mile together. Not a walk to remember. A mile together. The main event is next Tuesday from 11 to 4. Thank you to everyone who signed up, but also if you didn't sign up and you just want to come in for half an hour, you'll get trained and then you can help for the event, which would be super, super awesome and helpful. And then my last thing is on October 13th, there's this is put on by the Women's Center, but it's a monument quilt showing, and it will be the first university to have the entire quilt, and it's a ongoing collection of stories. This is from the little postcard. Ongoing collection of stories from survivors of rape and abuse, written, stitched, and painted onto red fabric. Our stories are displayed in city and town centers to create and demand public space to heal. So that is going to be at Ohio University on October 13th, and I encourage everyone to go and to bring a friend. That's the end of my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Burke. Senate committee reports. Are there any committee chairs that want to give a report tonight? All?
I just literally lost my train of thought. Oh, right. If you got emailed by me about the Committee on Diversity, Representation, and Inclusion, and couldn't make the meeting, please come talk to me after the meeting. We can just recap real quick. Also, the commissioners who are told about their delegates not attending, can you please make sure they do, or send the delegates? And if you'd like to join the committee, please just let me know. Yeah, we won't meet every week or anything. We're probably meeting bi-weekly. If you want to hear more about it, just see me.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
Is there anybody from community service and social activity?
You know you all had a meeting the other night. Oh yeah, literally.
So we talked about homecoming, we talked about possibly what banner we want to make for the parade. We discussed also what we're going to do for our meet and greet with alumni, and I think it's going to be great. So hopefully we'll have more updates for everyone soon. So that's my side.
Thank you. Moving on. Okay. Well, I forgot. Are any university committee reports that's on the agenda? Anyone? Okay. So my report, it will be short since we have to go into executive session still. But I just want to, I didn't get to do it last week, but all of our presenters that we're inviting have a specific reason for being here. When I send invites out to people to come to present to us, I give very specific questions, and and those questions are primarily things that we as executives campaigned on and would like updates on, and then it is supposed to inspire you all to run with the update and hopefully get a bill in action or do research or just little things like that to advance what's going on or call out what's not going on and should be going on. Just briefly with Faculty Senate, we have an extremely our relationship right now is super good. I have not seen a relationship with Faculty Senate like this since I've been at Ohio University. I would recommend, if you want to look at things that deal with curriculum or the cultural competency classes, if you're not on curriculum council, we have 5 reps. If you're not on it, I'd recommend maybe reaching out to a faculty senator. It doesn't have to be the faculty senate chair. It can be a faculty senator. So arts and science people, there are people that, of course, there are faculty members who represent your college or your department that your major's in. So I would recommend, reaching out to them, because I think if we had a joint resolution between faculty senate and student senate, that would be great. I don't think one's ever been done, and that would be pretty substantial. And there are a lot of things that we could potentially partnership on. You all just have to make the effort to do it. And if your position isn't the senator for this college and you want to take it on, go for it. Don't be afraid to do it just because your position says you don't represent that area. But reach out to the person who does, so there can be some collaboration. Like I said, there are a ton of things that were discussed tonight from Joe, and I think there are a lot of unanswered questions potentially, and I would recommend you all follow up on that if you want to as individuals. Just let your commissioners know what you're doing. You still let Nicole know, and then the other execs will know, and we want to make sure that if people are working on numerous things, that we can connect them together so we're not crossing ourselves down the line. Let's see. This is my last bit of my report, but I just want to say happy birthday to John Schlosser. His birthday is tomorrow. 21 on the 21st night of September, so you need to play that. I mean, not right now, it's not 21st night of September, but like, we all love it. So, that is the end of my report. John? Vice President Schneider.
Okay. So first thing, just. Okay.
Sorry. It's not really like the last couple of weeks.
I'll be smart. Alright, so first thing is everyone just make sure that you're paying attention to emails that come through OrgSync. I know sometimes that can go to your clutter, so if you don't know how to fix that, I'm sure Landon probably knows. If not, just go ahead and look at your OrgSync inbox too, because we send really important things that way. Commissioners, if you could all please send any events that you have coming up to Sarah Defibal. Yes. She's putting together our newsletter and would like to get that out to students, obviously. Also, Vice Commissioners, please make sure you're sending me the meeting minutes of your commission meetings. Send those to me so I can have all of those and know what's going on in weeks that I'm not meeting with your commissioner. For your commissions, email John if somebody has been absent for a while. He's been getting people that come back to him and say, oh, this senator hasn't been to any of our commission meetings for 2 weeks. And there's no paper trail, there's no documents or anything that say that that's really true or that has happened. So every time somebody's missing from a commission meeting, just get back to him within that day or within that week so he can keep track of everything. For Leadership Development Committee, I have 3 people that are on and ready to go, but I would like maybe 1, 2 more people. So if you're interested in that or still don't know what that's about, go ahead and send me an email so I can get you more information. And finally, at the end of this meeting, if I can talk to commissioners for Minority Affairs, LGBTQA, International Affairs, and Black Affairs for just a quick 2 minutes, that'd be great.
Thank you. Treasurer Woods.
So, I didn't say this during the Senate committee part because I already speak once, I'll just do it now. Budget committee, we, thanks to you all last week, we are formed. We are just having a little bit of difficulty finding a time. Everyone's looking at their schedules, picked out a time, told them all 7 said they can't be there, so we're trying to be working on the kinks of that so that you guys can get your internal budgets going. Elections reform. I mention this every meeting and we really want to get the ball rolling. I've had about 2 or 3 people reach out and I know a lot of you all have resolutions or platform things about elections, specifically SAC. Please talk to your senators, talk to yourself. Email me, let me know. It's a really important committee. It'll be fun, I promise you. Well, it'll be important, yeah. And so, but please let me know. I really want to get that started because anything that happens with elections reform will only be during this semester because anything elections cannot happen during next semester. So it's only 1 semester commitment. Please let me know. Y'all look great tonight. Thank you for business professional. I know it's hard. I get off work at 6:15, so I know it's hard to get dressed and get dressed up, but it's fun sometimes. And also a great convo and debate tonight. It was really awesome to see you all so engaged and prepared for this. We're really excited about that. And last before the numbers, so phones and laptops. I'm not going to be a hard guy about this, but it's completely okay to send quick texts back and forth, to whoever, emails, check that stuff. But when your face is buried in your phone and laptop the entire time, it's pretty conducive that you're not listening or paying attention, which is not conducive, that's what I would use the word. Conducive to a good Senate environment. And I want commission reports at least. I understand ours can be quite lengthy, but at least for commission reports every week and committee reports, please treat it like a presenter, close your laptop, stay off your phone, listen to them. They're doing a lot of important work. You all are part of doing that work, so please just listen those brief minutes that they're talking about that and on to the numbers.
Okay. Okay. I don't have those numbers. Alright, so
So in Senate, we have $24,505.35 allocated but not yet spent is $14,366.59. In SAC, we have $44,442.57. And in U Fund, we have $89,145.58. So just a little breakdown of things that we've spent this week. One, or that is not this week, but have been updated in the numbers. One was just an SDS discretionary, just so that it's discretionary, so just, I'm not gonna say what it is, but just so you know, that's why the number went down a bit on the part of theirs. And then the retreat, we spent $377.68, which is a dramatic decrease from last year. Last year was spent $2,695.20. So we dramatically tried to reduce those costs and make it financially sustainable, and so that was awesome. Last but not least, I have a report finally from printing services. The name badges, as expected, were $770. We spent, normally they're about $11 per badge. We got 110. We were given a discount for $7, so it was $770. So that came out of my discretionary. That's why it wasn't presented to you all first through a budget. And those numbers are true and accurate to the best of my knowledge.
And yep, Nicole has something to say.
Oh yes, so sorry. Super insignificant, but I forgot to say it in my report. The next 2 weekends are sorority recruitment, so as Executive Vice President for that council, I'm going to be a little bit busy, like 6 a.m. to midnight, Saturday and Sunday, and then the next Saturday and Sunday. So it's going to really suck, but it's going to be great. So if I'm really, really slow at replying to you, that's why. And if I'm a little bit like a zombie next week, that's also why. But thank you.
All right. Is there anybody on the executive staff who has a report and wants to give an update first? Okay. Tabling. I'm a little disappointed in the amount, or lack of amount, of people who table. There's a lot of people who are on there multiple times, like spending almost every second that they're free in the office tabling. You are representatives of the student body. You're there to talk about students, their issues, their concerns, and a great way to do that is by tabling, because there's people that are just like, hey, what is Student Senate? How can I contact my representatives? And if we have nobody manning it, it's kind of hard to put them in contact with. Let's see, there were 2 people signed up for tomorrow. That's it, for the entire day. 2 people. Come on, guys, we can do better than that. Let's see. Even if you're not tabling, you can still contact, your college, or go to your green, or go to the community that you represent. Like, hear your constituents' concerns about these important issues. Off my soapbox for a minute. Work relations. So, in the rules and procedures, week 4 is designated the time that the organization liaison gives a list of student orgs that we represent. She's still working on it. She's about 390 through. She has about 100, maybe about 150 to go. So just be patient with her. It'll be out sometime this week. You are all getting student orgs if you are a voting member. Actually, no, not even if everybody except for the executive staff. And then if you're on SAC, only the commissioner has student orgs because of conflict of interest. That's what else? I'm getting. Anyway, yeah, the executives aren't getting orgs because I see their schedules and I don't know when they're gonna have time to meet with all of them, so that's why we have to set a body. Paul, do you have an update?
Just the same thing said about the university inclusion. Keep the office clean. Keep the office clean. Coffee table. Just make sure that if you use something, you throw it away because I've seen disgusting spoons out there. That's it.
We do have a couple of interns here, so welcome to them. The interns met Monday, and I haven't talked to Jay Sarah yet about it, but they seem really excited. That's the end of my report.
Thank you, John.
I have one little thing to say. If you have to send something to anyone on the panel, send it to the panel email instead of the regular emails.
Senate.judicialpanel@ohio.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Senate.judicialpanel@ohio.edu.
Is that the end of your report? Thank you. Moving on.
Is that my phone?
Yeah.
Just three updates. One, I would like to really reiterate something Joe McLaughlin said about the communication between faculty senate and student senate. I can't speak to the history of this university, but most institutions, those two groups don't work together, and they work together really well here, so I would definitely take advantage of that. Someone said earlier about the stack. My favorite time is when we have a stack, because that's when I get to really understand personally where everyone sits on different issues. So I really appreciate the fact that you take that so seriously and that responsibility. I mentioned a few weeks ago when I last spoke about my interim CDO role. I will ask Landon to come speak before the body as a whole, but I'd love to get invited to the committee that works on diversity issues, and anyone that's part of Senate that wants to meet with me one-on-one on the topic of diversity and inclusion and what they'd like to see happening from a structural standpoint from administration. Please feel free to email me, jbpina@ohio.edu, and I'll make sure to try to spend some time. And if you really want to have that one-on-one time to discuss the future of diversity at the university, I would really ask that we try to do it in the next 6 weeks. I owe a report to the president on what my findings have been to date around mid to early November. So I'd love to have the input of individuals as well as the group in Senate. So that's what I have. Right, Sarah.
I don't really have a report other than to just offer if anybody wants to talk one-on-one or just one-offs about, or two-offs, whatever, about freedom of speech and the policy. As someone who's been a part of a lot of conversations, and I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about hateful speech versus hate speech, and hateful speech is protected by the Constitution. And I think the safety questions were pretty big, and so if people want to just sit and talk, I would love to do that. So I just want to offer that out to you all. And I don't think anything else.
Thank you.
Alright. Oh, goodness. So Zach kind of already hit some of the numbers. For this coming week, it looks like I just tallied up. We have about $28,000 of pending requests for Zach. So that just kind of is giving you an idea of what it looks like every 2 weeks for our staff members to kind of mull through that. We're sitting with about a little over $100,000 for the rest of the year to allocate out. This past week we allocated out 14% of what was requested. So out of the, I can't remember how much it was, a little over $11,000 was requested for the first biweekly, and we allocated out $1,500. So we are pretty strict, and I'm really proud of them because seeing them work and kind of ask those questions that deal with ethics and is this really good for the mission of the university? Is it following what we said with our kind of green events that we passed that resolution? And they're really thinking about those questions. So good job, Zach. It's really awesome to see that. Kudos to all of them. And also on the CIC side of things, make sure that if you're planning on applying for the homecoming court, the deadline is September 22nd. And I already told you all that you're amazing, all of you seniors, but please apply. The application will be read this weekend, and then it will be announced who gets an interview early next week. And then tell all of your student orgs to register for the parade, because the deadline is the Monday of homecoming, so we'll get to March. That's everything.
Yeah, we're registered, don't worry.
Thank you, Mackenzie.
Yes, of course.
Todd.
All right, everybody. Hi. I just want to talk about two things. One that I'm quite passionate about. This week is National Hazing Prevention Week, and this event encompasses hazing not with just Greek-led organizations, athletics, or other groups that you see in the media all the time. It's all student organizations, any student organization can haze. It's happened in the past. It has affected a ton of people, and I just want to remind each and every one of you to be your brothers or sisters or other organization members' keeper. Really go back to the mission and the values of your organization and ensure the safety of each other, because you're here to build each other up and work towards a common goal and really make this place and everywhere outside of Athens a better place. And when you invest hate and anger and bullying into that equation, the outcome is not really what your founders or your creators of your organization had really expected. So just please keep that in mind while you are all staying involved around campus. And also continue to reach out to me for assistance in any of your endeavors as society members. I met with Commissioner Burke earlier this week about some projects that she's working on. So please use me as a resource. I'd be happy to help, sit down and talk through some things and connect you all with anybody that you need to be connected with. But keep up the good work. I'm really proud and excited to see what's going to happen by the end of the semester. And go Bobcats.
Okay, so this is a little thing we do. So pursuant to our rules, the Ohio Revised Code, university policy, sunshine laws, a whole long list of things, we are able to go into executive session to discuss things that are listed. There are 6 things we can discuss. Nick?
Is there any way to possibly move this to the beginning of next week's agenda?
We cannot. We are mandated by the rules and procedures to discuss a certain matter on week 4, and we have an update from the judicial panel on a personnel matter. So with that being said, I will designate the clerk of court, our president pro tempore, the executives will leave the room, the advisors will leave the room, and, with Todd and Mackenzie can stay, and all non-Senate members must leave the room. That includes the press. So executive session is in order.